and the bear was literally standing on them the first time I could even see him.
Mm-hmm.
He was that close. And so then I decided, okay, your mind's going pretty quick this time. And I'm thinking, do I have to shoot this bear? And it's like, well, yeah, he initiated this one. And plus he's standing on top of my clients.
Hi there, John McAdams here with you again. What you just heard was an excerpt from my recent discussion with Master Alaskan Guide Phil Shoemaker. Phil was kind enough to take time out of his busy schedule to talk to me about how he got started in the hunting business, practical ballistics, caliber selection, and bullet selection as they all relate to bear hunting, some of the other less discussed, though still important aspects of preparing for a bear hunt, and a couple of noteworthy stories from his long career up in Alaska, to include his famous incident from 2016 where he killed an aggressive brown bear with his 9mm handgun. Now, you can learn more about Phil and his hunting operation in Alaska at his website, grizzlyskinsofalaska.com. There's a link to that site and the social media accounts for Grizzly Skins of Alaska in the video description. Check them both out to learn more. And now, without further ado, here is my full interview with Phil about bear hunting in Alaska. All right, well, good afternoon, Phil. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to join me on the podcast today.
I'm here. I'm glad to talk to you today.
All right, sounds good. Well, so I guess the first question I have for you is, what was young Phil like, and why did he move to Alaska?
I have always been a hunter. I mean, when I was 3, I was, chasing rabbits or something with a bow or a stick.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, junior high school years, Africa was what I wanted. I rode everybody I could think of. I could see it in a magazine. And then when I stopped in Alaska on the way to Vietnam, I thought, oh, this place looks pretty neat too. So once I kind of halfway grew up, I migrated to Alaska and started hunting. I saw an ad in the paper the first day I got here looking for somebody to go to work in a guide camp, wanted a packer. And I answered it, and I hadn't been in Alaska a week. I was out on a sheep hunt.
And so you started work as a packer there. What is the process like to become an actual licensed hunting guide in Alaska?
You need to have worked for a guide. It's varied over the years as the legislature gets involved. It's 3 to 5 years in the industry. So you've got to, and so you usually start as a packer. You're just camp help, and usually it's carrying heavy loads. Whether sheep season, I'm carrying meat back and or gear for the hunter, and moose season, moose quarters and bear hides and everything else. And so you're on the hunt
mm-hmm.
with the people all the time. You're out there with a guide and the hunter, and you're learning how the system works.
And you are something of they may not call it this formally, but you're something of an apprentice to that guide then, while you're the packer or whatever you're doing.
You are.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. Matter of fact, it's been being a packer now is recognized as basically an entry level to become a guide. 3 years in, and are recommended by a guide. And then there is here again, it varies depending on the year in the legislature, but there's usually some sort of a test involved. Your knowledge of game laws and ethics and rules and regulations to get your assistant guide license. And the assistant guides are the ones usually are out there with the hunter. Once you've got a guide license, you can hire assistants.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, you might have 2 or 3 or in the field at one time. But the guide, once you become an assistant for another 3 years and have recommendations from a guide to become a guide and recommendations from the hunters that you have guided, you can go ahead and get your fully registered guide license. That way you can run the business itself.
Mm-hmm. Is there a legal distinction between being a licensed guide and being an outfitter in Alaska?
Not anymore. There was for a while. Being an outfitter was wasn't when they first came out with guides. You're a guide. The guide was the outfitter, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Some people started calling themselves outfitters and just bootlegging, just dropping people off. There was no limits or registration, and they were dropping them off. And probably 20 years ago, the legislature came in and said, wait a minute, it's the same thing. You can't be an outfitter and do the same thing as a guide and get away with it. So an outfitter and a guide now are basically considered the same thing.
And then what about a master guide?
A master guide, somebody who's been doing it for 15 years, has been recommended by his clients, having had a good record, taken an X amount of hunters, and who have all written recommendations.
Mm-hmm. In practical terms, is there a difference legally between a master guide and a regular guide, or is this just something that helps?
It's more of an honorarium, but not necessarily. It was if somebody who's been in the business for 15 years and stayed in the business, you're a little more assured that, because you get somebody at a brand new guide license after 3 years in the business and be a real shyster. Once the master guides, if you've been doing it for 15 years and got a lot of happy hunters, then you're a little bit more of a good bet. And that was the purpose of the master guide in the first place. Is like, there's so many people trying to get up here to be guides. How can you choose between them? And so, well, at least if you got a master guide, you have somebody has a background.
Okay, fair enough. All that makes sense then. So how long, as you and I are recording right now, how long have you actually been going on hunts up there, starting with your packing time and all the way until now?
This is my 45th year.
Ooh, all right. Yeah. So that is interesting that you stopped in Alaska and decided you liked it on the way to Vietnam. What year was that?
Vietnam, that was 69.
Okay. All right, fair enough. And so you did your time were you in the Army then, serving in Vietnam?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, fair enough. Did your time there, went home, got out of the Army, and then made it up there several years later.
Yeah,
as soon
I
as you
finished
could.
up college. I finished college. I got a degree in wildlife, worked for Park Service and Fish and Wildlife and some private museums doing research and stuff. So, but Alaska was always in my mind. So.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair enough. Well, good deal. So here we are. You are well known as an Alaskan bear guide on the Alaska Peninsula, but that's not all that you've hunted, and that's not the only place in Alaska you've hunted over your 45 years of guiding, right?
Right. I had a guide area up in the Brooks Range and along the Yukon border. I hunted sheep, sheep, moose, caribou, everything they had to offer. And a lot of clients kept wanting big bears. And so when an opportunity came to move down here on the peninsula, and we've got a 40-acre homestead in the middle of the wildlife refuge. And once we got here, we just sort of stayed.
And your kids were born there, they grew up there, all of that stuff, right?
Yes, and they're both here with grandkids and growing up here.
Whew, wow. That has got to be a story in and of itself, just the ins and outs of making a living out there, hunting aside, professional hunting aside, just living out in the Alaska wilderness like that.
Which is the reason we do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a unique experience, to say the least. And so you went down there because you had clients that wanted big bears, you say. Was this also something too, that of all the animals that you've hunted, was like, did you just have the most connection with bears? That's something that you just enjoyed the most?
I think, at least in retrospect, looking back on it, yes. At the time, I enjoyed sheep hunting. I enjoyed hunting, whatever. But yes, once I got, we had grizzlies and black bears up in the Brooks Range. They were always fascinating. But yeah, once we got down here and living among the bears, I mean, we have literally bears in the yard, and quite often we're in their habitat. They're not. We don't have to go out there and hunt them. We're here. We had bears in the yard, well, I think 3 times this week already. So we're in a wilderness area within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Wildlife Refuge, and adjoining Katmai National Park. So we have a lot of bears, but we enjoy it. They're good neighbors.
Well, So that is an interesting thing that you say, especially for someone like me that I've never been to that part of Alaska. I've never had any interactions with any of the big bears up there. And so everything that I know about them secondhand. Far cry from someone like you that's lived among them for so long. So you talk about all the brown bears that live there. I also assume there's a good number of moose that live in that area too, right?
Yes, moose and caribou.
But there's no black bears that live in that part of Alaska, though.
No black bears within 200 miles. And the brown bear population here, especially with the salmon runs, is so dense. Black bears don't live very long down here.
Mm-hmm.
They do coincide in the southeastern part of Alaska, both black and brown bears, but it's a lot denser, more forested places for black bears to escape the brown bears.
Mm-hmm. Now, how long have you lived in this house that you're in now?
This is, I think, 35 years, 36 years.
Okay, so good. Almost three-quarters of your time in Alaska, you've been like in this one spot then. So you know it really well.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. And when you outfit your hunts, you have people like staying like in your house with you and you're going out and hunting out of that area?
Not usually. My wife kind of beats us up and tells us that's not really hunting. You're just too nice here. But yes, we can. We can see them. We see them out the window. Summertime, right? This time of year, they're breeding. It's pretty greened up and grassy. We'll see bears out of the yard breeding, for the next month until the salmon start running. But we've set camps out. Our guide area is a little over 1 million acres, I believe. Here, we've got maybe we have 3 different federal areas. They're exclusive for guiding. I mean, anybody can hunt there if you're legal to hunt in the state. But as far as the guiding operations, that's how they regulate, the guides. And so we've got these three areas, and we'll put a number of camps out, usually no more than 6, 7 camps at a time, and hunt for the season. Then we'll pick up the tents and bring them back to camp.
Now, I'm looking on your website. You talk about that there's a spring season, an even number of years, fall season, odd number of years. So this year you had a spring bear season, no fall season. Next year will be a fall season, but no spring season, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Do you know why they do it like that?
The Fish and Game, both the Peninsula and Kodiak are recognized as trophy bear areas. The biggest bears in the world are right here, the Peninsula and Kodiak. Kodiak got first start, and they went to a drawing. So you have to put in for a drawing on your areas. The Peninsula, they said it's remote enough to get here. They said we only every season, either spring or fall, we kill about 300 bears on the whole peninsula, and the population could sustain that. But you couldn't do both in a year. So they said, well, let's have a spring one year and a fall another. That way, every year they take approximately 300 bears, and it's sustainable. They don't have to go to drawings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. And instead of just doing only a spring season every year or only a fall season every year, they just wanted to mix it up and allow a little bit different hunting opportunities.
Yeah, and a lot of guides prefer one over the other. Success rate in ours has been about the same. They're a little different hunts. The hide's a little better in the spring, or potentially better, unless they've been rubbing around and the fur's getting rubbed off. But some hunters and guides prefer one over the other.
Are the bears physically bigger and heavier in the fall after they've had a chance to put on some weight over the course of the year?
Yes, but a really big bear can put on 300-400 pounds during the year. They're eating 30,000 calories a day. They can put on some weight.
Yeah, my goodness, geez. And so, would it be fair to say that, say, your heaviest bears that your clients have taken over the years have been in the fall then?
Yes, although the bigger mature boars still have layers of fat on them in the springtime. But yes, that's their keeping them, sustaining them all the winter. So they've lost a little bit of weight.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair enough. You say that you hunt moose and bear right now on your website, and so I'm assuming, say, like for this year, you had your spring bear season in May. Then you're going to turn around and you're going to do the moose season, I guess, in September. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Mhm. And you do some fishing in between.
Yes. The main reason that the bears get so big here is because we have such a tremendous salmon run. So, um, and we didn't intentionally get into that. I wanted to be hunting, caribou hunting in August, but as the caribou population dwindled for a while, um, we got into fishing, and this is sort of the Serengeti of fishing. The Bristol Bay, Alaska, is an incredible fishing spot. So we just kind of fell into that. My daughter loves that almost as much as she does hunting, so she kind of runs the fishing end of it.
Ah, I see. Okay. I first heard about you through your incident that occurred on a fishing trip several years ago where you had to defend your life and the lives of a couple of fishing clients from a bear that got a little bit too aggressive with you. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, I've we run into bears yearly. We have bear incidents yearly, meaning that one maybe get a little too close or threaten us, but we've never had to shoot a bear on a fishing trip. I mean, occasionally I've shot in the air. I mean, I bet 3, 4 times in 35 years to try to scare one away. But this one time, I forget, it's probably, like you said, it's been 5, 6 years ago. Um, I had a couple. We were hiking along a dry riverbed, so the grass was, waist to chest high, and on either side of us were the bushes and trees, the alders and willows. And we bumped into a bear, which is common. We do that all the time. We're fishing on a stream where the bears fish all the time. So I bumped into one. I could hear him charge. He came charging toward us,
Mm-hmm.
and I hollered. I stopped and hollered, and it stopped. I couldn't see him. I knew he was less than 20 feet away in the brush, but I could hear him in there. He turned around and I heard him crashing away. Um, I thought, oh, good, we're fine. He ran away. It's what they've been doing that for years. Within 2 minutes, maybe less than that, he had circled around, got downwind, which is what bears do. They trust their noses over their eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
Got downwind from us. He circled around to identify us and was coming straight back at us. I could hear him coming through the bushes. And it was hair on my neck was standing up. I don't know if the clients knew what was going on, but I knew that what the bear had done, and he's coming back at us. And as he comes, I wouldn't be able to see him till he was within 15, 20 feet from me, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And at a full charge, the bear going 30 miles an hour, that didn't give you a whole lot of time to do anything. Well, as soon as he popped out of the grass, the clients were 20 feet, 25 feet behind me, maybe. And the bear went for them. And there was a couple, and they just grabbed each other and fell over in the grass. I mean, the perfect thing. They were balled up into one group of people and just fell down. And the bear was literally standing on them the first time I could even see him.
Mm-hmm.
He was that close. And so then I decided, okay, your mind's going pretty quick this time. And I'm thinking, do I have to shoot this bear? And it's like, well, yeah, he initiated this one. And plus he's standing on top of my clients. So I said, okay, I got to shoot him, but I don't want to shoot through him. I don't want to pass through. I don't want to hit a client. That's a bad career move for a guide. So as soon as I got a good chance, okay, I shoot him right behind the shoulder. And we're talking about distance of under 20 feet. I'm not sure exactly how far it was, but it was close.
Mm-hmm.
And I popped him right behind the shoulder I had a 9mm at the time. I had just tested it for the Tim Sunless, who owns Buffalo Bore bullets. He had sent me some bullets to test. He said, "Do you think these would work?" And I tested them the week before, compared with my 44 and 357 and my 30 Tokarev and a whole bunch of guns I knew penetrated well. And I said, "Yeah, it would work." And since we were just going for a short afternoon, and I'd fished this creek for 30 years, I thought, I'll just take this in a day. Usually you can scare a bear off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hit him with a 9 millimeter, and it turned and it roared and turned and bit at the wound and turned right back around. And I hit him again, and it happened, I think, 3 or 4 times. I just kept popping him right behind the shoulder, and a little different angle each time because when he turned around, it wasn't exactly the same spot, but I was putting them all about the same thing in the chest cavity. And he finally turned and took off running, and he was dead within, I don't know, 50 yards.
Whew.
Um, and the clients got up out of the grass. I mean, here again, like I said, we're talking about almost chest high grass.
Mm-hmm.
And they stood up and they're like, "Wow, we heard your warning shots." And they said he was standing on top of us. And the woman says, she said, "I could see his teeth." He said, "If he could have bit us anytime he wanted, but he was real agitated. He would turn his head back and forth. He was confused. And once he was standing on people and there was more around, bears are intelligent animals, and I think once he realized, okay, I've made a mistake coming back in here with more people than I thought. He just thought he was going to chase off whoever was there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he wasn't going to prey on us. He was ready to chase us away. Well, he has a bunch of scars on him. He had fresh wounds. He had been fighting, and we weren't 20, 25 feet from the river where he was fishing. And the whole time we were skinning him, there were bears in there fishing. So he had been in probably multiple fights that morning and wasn't going to put up with anything else.
So he had been fighting with other bears over this fishing spot to get at those
Right.
salmon, and you think another bear beat him up bad, and
He was not terrible. I mean, he was a good bear. I bet he weighed 800-900 pounds. I would liken him to like an 18-year-old teenage boy. I mean, he was, he was getting his full size just about, and was standing up for his own. But he probably ran into a bigger bear that had chased him off, or maybe he had run off another bear and was just like, I don't know what went through his mind, but
mm-hmm.
he didn't want us there.
Yeah, so this was a 9 millimeter Smith & Wesson semi-automatic pistol, and you were using 147 grain Buffalo Bore hard cast bullets in it, right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And so these are bullets designed to just penetrate like nobody's business for a 9 millimeter.
They are. Any handgun, there's no handgun is proper for a bear. I mean, I've had, I got 44 Magnums and heavy loads, and I've shot 454 Casuls and 475 line bars, and all those. Those make a decent hunting gun,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not ideal for stopping charges. That's why people carry 375 H&Hs, and
Mm-hmm.
I carry a 458. I mean, if you really have to stop a wounded charging animal, handguns are not what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But for an unwounded animal, and these bears, they don't like to be hurt. I mean, I might have got the same scaring effect by shooting him with a 22 and hurting him and having him run off. But I don't recommend that. Matter of fact, I don't particularly recommend a 9 millimeter with the right ammo. You're perfectly safe with one, I do believe. I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't go chasing a wounded one. I'll take my big rifle, but
Mm-hmm.
for an animal that's threatening you, or even seriously coming after you, once you up the ante and wound them with something, that usually changes their mind.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing about this handgun too, right? It's small, it's light, it's easy to carry, and even though it gives up some performance in some areas to more powerful things, it's light and it's easy to carry, and you had it with you when you needed it.
Yes, and when a few days later, my wife and daughter, who both carry handguns, said, "What were you thinking? Why didn't you have your 44 with you?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, I've learned something on this incident too." I said, "Took them." I said, "Let's go down the range here, right in our backyard," and I set out a few little chunks of 2x4 blocks and stuff, and I said, "Hit those as fast as you can. They're set them out there 15 feet away. Hit as many of those as you can, as fast as you can." They carry 357s, and I give them a 44, and they said, "Now try the 9 millimeter." And just like, oh, eye opener. I go bam, 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 and make more hits in a shorter period of time with that than you can with a big 44 that
Mm-hmm.
got to come back down from recoil. And so it's self protection and hunting are two completely different things.
Mm-hmm.
The emphasis on the gun.
Well, and as the saying goes, there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs, and all the trade-offs definitely worked in your favor in this case with the 9mm, and it proved. Would you describe it as adequate for what you used it for in that case?
Definitely. Well, I took photos when I went back to skin it. You have to turn everything into this fish and game, report it. My daughter called and reported and went back with me, helped me skin it. One of the bullets was just under the hide on the offside of the bear. It was enough to go through a 900-pound bear.
Mm-hmm.
And almost complete penetration. Not complete. That was the whole thing I was thinking too. I don't want to, especially on the situation with clients right there under the bear. I did not want a complete penetration.
Mm-hmm. And so this is a situation where would it be safe to say that you would recommend, say, if someone is carrying a handgun for self-defense, they need to be, regardless of the caliber, using a bullet along the lines of what you use there, where it's going to penetrate well, especially if you have a lighter handgun where you can, get through the skull, get through the hide, wherever on the body you're shooting this bear, in the terrible situation where you need to use it.
Exactly. And that's any handgun, like I said, it doesn't have a shocking power enough that, like a big rifle might. You need penetration, and, people say, well, here's what the police carry. Well, police are dealing with, 100 and 200-pound people, not 600 and 800-pound animals.
You mentioned a minute ago that you compared this exact load for the 9mm to, among other things, a 30 Tokarev. And that's not a cartridge I hear too many people talk about. I have a CZ52 chambered in that cartridge. How did it penetrate compared to the 30 Tokarev?
Tokarev out-penetrated the 9mm. And man, people have called me idiots for using a 9mm on that thing. If I'd had the Tokarev, I'd have done the same thing. And I carried a Tokarev in Vietnam, and I know how well they penetrate, and it's a great round. And the difference in size and diameter, there's not enough significant shock on a bear either way. It's it's the holes you poke in the vitals that make the most difference.
Yeah, of all the handguns I've ever shot, that 30 Tokarev penetrates like nobody's business. Those little 85 grain full metal jacket bullets.
Right, and the little 85 grain hollow points are just wicked. They really expand.
Well, very interesting. So what kind of handgun is it that you have in 30 Tokarev?
Oh, it's a military Tokarevs.
Yeah.
Like I said, they're an underrated gun in America anyway.
Yeah, mine's an old CZ52. No one ever knows what it is.
Yeah, CZ. Yeah, I've had CZ52s. Yeah, there's a few other guns that were made in the Tokarev. Well, yeah, Lugers, and there's pretty close to the 30 Luger.
Mm-hmm. Well, so good example here of the importance of penetration and of shot placement on bears. Speaking of shot placement, in your experience of all your years guiding clients, I'm sure you've had a number of people wound a bear and have it turn into a rodeo out there. Are they wounding these bears because they are shooting it in the wrong place and hitting what they're aiming at, or they're shooting it in the right place or aiming at the right place and missing their aiming spot?
I've had numerous people tell me, well, I hit him right behind the shoulder. And I said, well, that's not where your bullet went. It might be where you're aiming at, and you're hyper focused on this. But people get nervous when they get close to the bears. I mean, people pay lots of money and spend a lot of time and dreaming about these hunts, and once they get up close and personal on a bear, they're nervous. That's goes with the territory. That's why they do it. It's fun. But if you stick a good bullet in the right spot, the hunt's over. But people being human, they kind of don't always get the bullet where they think they're going to.
Mm-hmm.
Just put it that way, politely.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that. Do you have a lot of problems with clients coming up there with just too much gun, more than they can handle, and flinching?
They do. People ask me. I tell them to bring it. I ask them what they have. A 30-06 is fine. I had I mean, for years, even the Pinella and Tallis and the guys from Kodiak in the 40s and 50s, they recommended a 30-06 also. If a guy can shoot something bigger, yeah, it makes you feel a little better, might kill him a little quicker. But it's easier to place your bullet. I mean, as the 9mm shows, that a small bullet in the right spot is better than a great big bullet in the wrong spot. Mm-hmm. That kind of sounds trite, but it's definitely true. And I had a couple of two brothers from Colorado. One of them came up on a moose hunt, and they wanted to come back for a bear. And he says, "Do you mind if my brother brings his 270? He really likes his 270 Winchester." I said, "Get some Nosler partition bullets and you can come." And he put one, when he got a big bear, came out of the den, and he was 80 yards away. He put one right behind the shoulder of that bear, and the bear spun to bite at it. And he put a second one. He was ready to put the second one on as the bear turned around, hit him on the other side, and that bear never left its track. It was dead right there. There's 270 partitions that gone all the way through the bear. And his other brother, he brought up 7 mag, and it poked a hole with a good bullet all the way through the bear, and you stick it in the right spot, it's dead. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many people I've had with their 375s and 340s that they were afraid of, and they misplaced their shots. So it's where you hit them and what you hit them with. Placement and penetration are the two factors you got to have. Mm-hmm. All that power and everything else, it may or may not help, but it can hurt if you can't shoot it well.
Yeah, I think that 270 with 150 grain partition is an absolutely deadly and very underrated combination. I have a friend that has used that combination on, he's never killed a big bear with it, but he's killed caribou, he's killed moose, he's taken it to Africa, killed all his plains game, everything with it. It's just been wonderful, where it's just devastating on the animal with that fast expansion up front, and it penetrates like nobody's business, and he can shoot it really well.
And people can shoot, and they can shoot it well. The recoil doesn't intimidate the hunter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that outfitter in Africa was a little skeptical of him at first bringing it over, but then they saw how he shot it, and they saw how it worked, and like, oh, okay, well, yeah, this is easy. This is a piece of cake.
It is. It's, and here again, it boils right down to the shooter. That's why I ask them, what do you have? What do you like shooting? Take that. Mm-hmm.
In your area where you do most of these hunts now, what's the typical distance guys are shooting at a bear at?
Well, there's nowadays with everybody getting these big 34mm scopes and high power things and think they can shoot it, 1,500 yards. There's people trying to advertise that, but it's unusual. We can't get under 100 yards. Mm-hmm. And I learned years ago that I had less problems. I used to try to get people, close enough to hit the bear. Mm-hmm. And you still have problems. So I've learned, the last 20 years, get so close they can't miss, and then your problems are usually over. Because people are going to be nerds on these hunts. But if I get them, 50 yards, 30 yards, that's pretty well they're going to get. Even if they place it badly, I've usually got time to help them if necessary. But usually I don't need to.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Now, is that 270? Is that the smallest cartridge you've had clients use on bears?
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. I can understand, say, this may maybe be a situation where local hunters in Alaska would be using different things than a guy that's dropping a bunch of money on this hunt coming up from the lower 48, the hunt of a lifetime. They feel like they need something special and that sort of thing. They don't want to bring a 243 up. I mean, would you say no to a guy that wanted to bring a 243?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, here again, I'd ask what bullet is, mm-hmm. and let him know that, Alaska, the guide laws require if the guide thinks the animal, a wounded animal, is escaping, they're required by law to fire. Mm-hmm. So as long as they know that, and I tell the animal, if it's your animal, I'll get you close and you put it in the right spot, I'm not going to shoot. I mean, 243 will do it. I mean, I've known plenty of locals here. I know one guy I think it was one of them on the Mountain Man show. He used a 22 250 and he's killed plenty of grizzlies in the interior with it. Natives, and friends I've got use 223s. Mini 14s killed a lot of bears. It's where you put it, but if you got time to do it. But when you're on an expensive hunt, um, and you want to make sure you come home with it, then I recommend something. I usually say a 30-06, but if you want to go down a little bit, I wouldn't be afraid to have somebody come with a 243.
All right, fair enough. Um, have you ever experienced an incident where someone shot a bear with an improper bullet and it just failed to penetrate?
Oh yeah, you don't do this for 40 some years and not have a few that didn't work.
Can you go into a little bit more detail about what happened, what they were using, that sort of thing?
I can't think of any right off the top, any specific ones. And I know it's happened. I've got boxes and boxes of bullets. All the bullets that would come out of animals, I've got them um, categorized and notes on them, the distance and who shot it and when and where. Actually, I've got one from you know 30 years ago. The gun writer Finn Augard came up and bought a client,
Mm-hmm.
and the hunter had shot. It was a little over 100 yards at the bear, and it was one of Finn's loads. It was he hit it where he was aiming, but the bullet was just under the hide. It did not. This wasn't on the offside. This was on the inside.
Mm,
For some reason, it did not penetrate. It's a nostril partition.
really?
I've got the bullet. And so strange things do happen.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. It's like, well, if it was really a low velocity, but then he wouldn't have hit it at the distance he was aiming at, probably in the same spot. But so who knows what happened? Maybe it ricocheted off of something. I don't know what happened. So, you know, you can always find some bullet that I've got partitions that didn't open. I've got Swift A-frames that didn't open. Nose get pinched shut. So bullets can behave strangely for whatever reason, whatever they hit. There's a lot of variables we don't really understand or know about or are unique. So it's kind of when somebody tells me this doesn't work or that doesn't work or I don't like partitions or I don't like X's or I say, well, how many of them have you seen? Most of them work pretty good most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a 375 steel jacket solid that a guy had on a moose hunt, and it didn't penetrate. It kind of turned around sideways and went sideways and then went off. He was trying to finish off a moose with it. I mean, that thing by all rights should have kept on going, but it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So finding examples of one don't really prove anything.
Yeah. How many bears you think you've been involved with killing over the course of your entire life?
Oh, I don't know, 40 years, and we take, 6, 7 bear hunters a year. And, I didn't guide all of them, but I've guided lots of them. I had 2 this spring I guided, 2 hunters themselves I guided, though I don't know, quite a few.
Yeah. Yeah. So well north of 100, maybe 200. And so, yeah, I'll bet you see all kinds of crazy stuff when that happens.
Yeah, you do.
Now, I assume when we talk about using the quote unquote right bullet in whatever cartridge you bring up there, you're talking about something like a partition or an A-frame or a Barnes or things like that, right?
Exactly, in the premium. Although the guy who came up with a 270 and a partition, his brother brought his 7 mag up. He didn't even ask me what to bring, and we actually had a movie of his shooting his bear. Bear was a little over 150 yards, I guess. You could see the bullet go all the way through. I mean, blue. You could see the red streak. It was in the snow, and he was shooting Remington Corlocks. He said, I went in to buy that stuff at partition. They wanted like $78 a box. I'm not paying that for bullets. I got these for $29 at Walmart. And but he's on a high dollar bear hunt, but he could shoot, which is here again back to the guy knows what he's doing, and the conditions were right, and so he got away with what he was using.
Now, from the perspective of a guy that's been involved in a lot of moose hunting and a lot of bear hunting, are there major differences between the terminal performance you need on a bullet to kill a moose versus a bear?
Oh no, not really. Moose act different, react different, I guess is you hit a moose usually in the lung and the vital. They usually just kind of lock their legs up and just stand there.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of brace themselves for another hit. Whereas a bear, they'll typically, quite often, they'll fall down or stumble or fall and take off at a dead run. Moose don't usually do that unless it's either a flesh wound, or if you hit tight the spines that drops them when they come back up again. It's not a vital area. When they get back up, then they're leaving. But typically, if you stick one in the chest area of a moose, he just kind of locks his legs up and stands there and says, "Bring on the next one." So bears won't do that.
And so is it pretty common for a guy to make a good shot on a moose and it stands there, and then you shoot it 2 or 3 more times and then it just falls over a minute later?
Yes.
Yeah. And then a bear, they turn and they bite at it, or they run and they spin around and they get real animated after you shoot them.
Yeah, yes, animated and gone.
Yeah.
And they're usually these big bears, especially the ones we're hunting. The trophy bears are never far from cover. They hang out, whether it's on Kodiak or here. They're usually not more than a half a dozen steps, and they're in cover or off a hill or out of sight. So it's if your first shot's definitely the most important.
Yep.
You may not get another one at it.
How far? So a guy shoots a bear straight through both lungs with a 300 Win Mag with a 200 grain partition or something, makes a good shot on it. They disappear into the alder thicket or whatever, right? Whatever cover they're close to. How far do they normally go in a situation like that? And how long do you wait to follow them up?
It's a situational thing, I guess. I'm weighing the conditions. If it's pouring down rain, you're not going to have a blood trail for long. Mm-hmm. If I'm obviously paying close attention, so I could see where the bullet hit. I got a good idea. Okay, that bear is going to be a dead bear, or this bear is going to be a problem bear. I'll usually, if it looks like it's a solid hit and a good hit, I'll usually wait, 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes before I go in. The whole time I'm watching and looking around. Is it going to pop out of these bushes over here or down this valley? Looking around to make sure it's not still running somewhere else. But like I said, if I get as close, you get so close you can't miss. Like I said, I can see if it's a good hit, and I say, I know what you're shooting. I saw what you shot it with. We're going to find that bear in 50 yards or 60 yards.
Mm-hmm. And
the years of doing it.
Yeah, well, that's what you get after 45 years of doing it. You know how bears react, and you can make a lot of judgments over the course of a few seconds that you weren't able to do when you first started doing this job.
Right. And if you get after them, I used to, take off right after them, and if they're lightly wounded, or you get up on them, I've tracked bears. I've tracked bears as long as 3.5 days to finally find one. No, it was hit hard, but it was still moving. And I've, lost bears that looked like they were hit pretty good and checked out, and they were still traveling miles away. So there's always the example that's like, okay, this can happen. Mm-hmm. But so you're trying to narrow those down.
I imagine it can be pretty nerve-wracking following up a wounded bear in thick cover like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Simple word.
Mm-hmm.
I can answer that one quickly.
How often has it happened where you followed one up and it's come at you? How often do they just run away and want to get away from you versus they get aggressive with you?
If they're wounded and you catch up to them, they're usually feeling trapped, and then they will come at you. I mean, pretty much you can pretty well count on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Has that been one of your most scariest incidents in your career? Was a situation like that?
Well, it definitely has your undivided attention. Yes, I guess that'd be probably a fair enough answer. But yeah, it's I don't let the client go with me on those situations, because usually if it's somebody who's misplaced a shot at unwounded animal, when he was calm and a little farther away, I don't want that guy in the bushes with me with a loaded gun and between and a bear coming at us.
Yeah.
So I'll usually leave the client, and that they're usually very happy to do. Once they see what's going on, they're usually happy to follow. I've taken a few. My daughter's been with me on a few, and my son on some. I mean, it's somebody that you can trust and know.
Yeah.
Is certainly a company.
Mm-hmm.
Usually not the client.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I've heard lots of stories, not necessarily in Alaska, but just hunters in general. You get into a situation like that, and somebody accidentally shoots one of the other hunters while they're out there, and I can see
There's
it.
so many, but that's why I tell we don't carry rounds in the chamber here. And when we're close enough, I don't carry around in the chamber. I mean, we tell our clients you don't carry around the chamber. I mean, it's going to take a while if a bear's chewing on you, but a gun is instantaneous. You're going to lose a limb or worse. So we don't not. That's the more dangerous aspect of it, is having somebody behind you with a loaded gun that's nervous.
Mm-hmm. Well, so we have talked about cartridges and bullets a lot at this point. That's something that's fun. Everyone really enjoys talking about it. But that's not the only thing that's important on one of these hunts. What is one thing that you think doesn't get talked about enough by people getting ready to go on one of these big bear hunts with you, and is an area that people are often lacking in coming up there?
Oh, that's a pretty broad question. I mean, the knowledge of the bears. I mean, that's what is something I always try to impart. I mean, bears are highly intelligent animals. I mean, a lot smarter than dogs. And, everybody we know has got dogs that are smart. And bears have an ability to reason. We have one example I give is when we at remove season, we have a meat hanging, we have a meat shed here in camp, and we have definitely lots of bears living close by coming in trying to get the meat, and we've got an electric fence around it. When we first put an electric fence, we watched a big old boar come up, and then sows and smaller bears would get shocked by electric fence and go away. They had one big boar walked up, and we watched him walk up and get shocked. And he just stepped back about 3 steps, and he sat down there and just kind of tilted his head and looked at it for a second, stood up and smashed the hole. Just walked up, raised a paw, and just smashed the whole fence to the ground, and then walked right on through. I mean, he reasoned out, okay, I can get through this. That thing shocked me. What am I going to do? And didn't take him long to figure out, okay, I can do that. I've watched old bears come around, and the government always puts up electric fences around all the research camps. And watch bears walk around, they grab the insulated handles to open it up. So I'm just telling this to bears have got a sense, they're intelligent animals. If you're tracking one, that's the scariest part, because they will set up ambushes. They will circle back, and come back around instead of laying beside their original trail. And that takes a pretty high degree of sophistication to think, okay, I'm setting a trap for this person. So
Jeez.
It's a cat and mouse game.
Mm-hmm. My goodness, man. Got to have a tremendous amount you're walking that balance where you know these animals and you need to be respectful of them and know what they're capable of and take appropriate steps. But I also imagine too that it's also not good to be out there just terrified of the bears, getting nervous, and you're just kind of a mess out there too.
Exactly. We've had clients who turned out were petrified of bears, who wouldn't go out of the tent to go take a leak, unless a guide went with them. And it's like, okay, this is usually not going to end well, because he's too afraid of them. We had bow hunter came up one year and he shot a moose with a bow on 40 yards. He was a good shot with a bow. Came up with a bear, but he was. Once he saw a bear up close, he said, "Can I borrow a gun?" He said, "I thought this was going to be like shooting a moose or a deer, but it's not." So yeah, who knows what's going through people's minds, and but as long as they're thinking about it and honest about it, it's easy enough to deal with. But if we've only had one or two who just like, I can't do it. Get me out of here.
Well, when you are corresponding with a client ahead of time of the hunt, and or when they step off the plane, when they get there, What are some of those telltale signals that just show, oh man, I'm going to be in for a rough week with this person?
Mm, good question. I have to think about it, all the situations, but anymore we've done it so long. Most of our clients are word of mouth. They've hired with us before. They've told other people. Um, but yeah, somebody that's well hyper. It's like anything else. Usually the braggarts or the loud ones are the ones who have got the need the most watching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as a general rule, most people are good and respectful and listen and want to do what you want to do, and those who want to be experts in everything usually aren't.
Yeah.
It's a people game. Guiding is a you need to understand people, and yeah, or if you don't, you're going to learn about it. But if you're doing it halfway good because you're taking people out in something they're not comfortable with, it's out of their element. We all have things we're good at and we can do, but we get people up here they're make millions in whatever they do, and they get out here and I've had people turn around and look. We walk out of the main lodge and go for a mile to go fishing or something. They look around back of the house and who lives over there? It's like that's the house we just left. So, they're, but they're great at what they do. So it's a
And so let's take the same question and flip it on the head. What are some of the things that show, okay, man, this person really gets it. I'm going to have a real good time with this person, or they're really experienced at what they do without being a jerk.
uh, they're 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 not trying to show off when they get here, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And we get majority of people are that way. I mean, it's we usually count on that happening, and we're you know surprised if it's not.
Yeah.
And most people, you give them you get to know them. Okay, where's your strengths and weaknesses, and that's that's what we do.
Yeah. So I can certainly imagine a situation where you get a person that's a know-it-all and a braggart, and they come up and they start trying to tell you how you need to be doing a better job hunting, and they've never been to this area, they've never hunted bear before or any of that, right?
It hasn't happened to me in a long time, but yes, it has happened.
Yeah.
One of our younger guides years ago he started out guiding. I got him up. He was guiding by the time he was 20, um, and had some guy in his 60s was like, he gets out in the morning, puts around the chamber, and he says, "No, we don't do that." He says, "Young man, I've been hunting since before you were born." His comment is like, "So had the last guy that almost killed me." It doesn't matter that we don't do that. Um, and you get it more. I mean, I got enough gray in my beard now that people tend to listen to me. But I was that guy with a young guy first too, and you got to dealing with old timers who are set in their ways can be difficult,
Mm-hmm.
as you can ask my kids or grandkids.
Well, and I also imagine too, not at all trying to pick on anyone at all, but I also imagine that you deal with a lot of clients that are older. They're at a point in their personal life, their career, where they have the time and the money to afford one of these trips, but they are also not a 30-year-old guy anymore. And I'm sure there's some physical difficulties some of these people have where the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I imagine too that some of these people are very experienced hunters, very nice people doing their absolute best out there, but it's just there's some challenging aspects to it. They can't walk as fast or as far as they used to, and that's some things that you and your guides need to deal with to accommodate these people and set them up for success, huh?
And they're all successful people at whatever they do. It's like I said, people. It's like, okay, I'm lost out here in the wilderness, but I can get you through, you know, through the internet or anything else. I mean, they're all good at something,
Mm-hmm.
and they're usually very good at it and very successful at it. So you're dealing with successful people. Um, and we do. I always train if we got new guides. Like these people are all successful. They're all good. So treat them with that kind of respect.
Yes. Yeah. You would not be very good in the operating room doing open heart surgery on somebody. But that person is, and they're going to be kind of clueless, maybe out there on this bear hunt too. So it's good to keep that in mind and make sure everyone is just has all of those things in mind when you're dealing with these people, huh?
It is, and it's like the hunting's that same way, kind of multifaceted. There's lots of little things we can ask this question about this gun or that gun and stuff, but there's a whole lot going on all the time, and that's the beauty of it. That's the fascination with it.
How physically challenging are these hunts in terms of the weather, the terrain people are dealing with, that sort of thing?
Quite physical, I guess, but we deal with it on their level. I mean, we can't go just because, I mean, I'm 75 now. I'm still guiding, but yeah, I can't do what I was doing at 25.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can. But um, but I hunt differently. I hunt slower, hunt more methodically. Walk more like the animals. Like let's take breaks and look around. Let's look around, and pay attention to what's going on. I anymore. I mean, my son's daughter running the business now. I still guide. I still fly. I still do everything I did before. I just do it a little slower, and I can't be fired. So I love it. It's perfect. Uh, but yeah, I've learned to deal with it. I guided two different hunters this year. One hunter, the first hunter, I think we were day 3 or so. We got a nice bear, and then my son had to go fly and take care of some other camps, and so I took his client, and by day 7 we had got him a big bear too. Um, but it is hard, and you're constantly judging. And that comes with a little bit of experience. I mean, when I'm 25 and I can run up and down any mountain, you give me a 50, 60-year-old guy who sits behind an office desk, I'd probably try to run him into the ground, but that doesn't work either. You work within their limitations.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got camps that we know, okay, this camp we're more likely to see bears up close. This camp where bear hunting is not a get out and go. You hunt with your eyes more than anything else, because the more you walk around in this country, you can literally sit on a hill and see 100 square miles. I mean, that's 5 miles in every direction is 100 square miles. So you can see bears that you shouldn't be going after, because you're going to scent the area up. So I've seen bears come along 2 days after you walked across the place and hit your trail and turn and run. So you don't want to, we're hunting with our binoculars and eyes and spotting scopes. And if we see a bear that's coming our way, or we think we can get a stalk on it, we'll go after it. We do what we can with the clients we've got.
I'm looking on your website right now at some of the photos you have posted on here of the area that you hunt, and it looks very open. And I can very easily understand how you can get up on one of those hills and see 5 miles. And on a really good day out there, you're up on a glassing spot like that. How many bear will you typically see sometimes?
Oh, it's on time of year, but spring hunts, you don't see as many bears because they're coming out of the dens. My son just did a bear survey. He's been down doing bear surveys for Fish and Game for the last week. And farther down the peninsula, they're just coming out of the dens. It's colder. There's more snow. Green hadn't started. So in the spring, you don't see as many, but you normally see the same number of big bears, because that's who comes out first. The older boars come out of their dens first. In the fall, we can sit on a hill, and seeing 20 bears a day is not unusual. Sometimes you can see a lot more than that. But you're looking at sows and cubs and younger bears, and I mean, you still see 1 or 2 big boars, but you don't. So the percentage of big bears is about the same. You see more of them in the spring. That's one reason people like spring bear hunt. They look at the success rate. Well, there's more boars killed in the springtime than in the fall. That's true, but that's because people who don't know, they still shoot the first bear that comes out. Well, there's a bigger chance it's going to be a big bear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the fall, if you don't know what you're doing with bears, and that one looks good, that one looks good. It's like, well, it's not as big as I thought. Once you've got, they all look big when you first look at them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can definitely understand that, how someone that hasn't done it very often could easily get confused. What are the?
And even if not, I turned down a bear this spring. I turned it down the first day. I didn't think the hunter could get there, but he was confusing bear. I mean, all their different signs you got him. He had big. He was well furred. Everything. And he was dark like a boar. He kind of walked like a boar. You can tell they usually got more muscle mass, but he was too fluffy and didn't look like a bear. We finally, I took a hunter over there by the end. I said, "Oh, let's go try." He was a big boar. He was a big boar. He just had the thickest fur I think I've ever seen. He was probably probably I'm guessing a 10-year-old boar who had his mass on it, but he still had a nice head of hair. I mean, all men, whether it's bears or people, the hair gets thinner usually, and
They don't gray like people do when they get older, do they?
not tiny little bits, but no, they usually tend to get darker
All right.
as they get older. But the hair gets thinner and less of it, and they start walking like old men. You can tell a bear with your naked eye, a mile, 2 miles away. You can say there's an old bear. You can see the way he walks, rather than he's not bouncing around like a cub or kids. You learn all those things about when you're watching them too.
What is the weather typically like there in May or in October while you're hunting in the spring or in the fall?
Up most springs, I've stayed in this business long enough. You have a selective memory, I guess. We stay at it because we still like it. But this year was pretty cold and but cold and wet, I guess, for spring. Spring's normally dry here on the peninsula, fairly dry. This is a little wetter spring than normal, but we got almost 20 hours of daylight, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can hunt as much as you can. But it's both time I think it was in the 30s, maybe get up in the mid 40s for a few days, which is kind of cold if there's a wind. But I've had spring bears where it was sunny the majority of it, and I had hunters a couple different times got sunburned so bad they didn't want to hunt the next day, or sunburnt their feet. They took the boots off just to thaw out and warm up. And spring's typically better weather. At least that's how my memory goes.
Mm-hmm.
Fall is when the storms are starting to come in. It gets a little windy, rainier. Don't usually get snow. You might snow a little bit, but then it doesn't stick. But you see a lot of bears. You'll see less bears in the spring, but you see the same number of big bears, trophy bears, and typically better weather in the spring. Fall, we usually get fall. You can count on some pretty nasty weather, but not always. But you see a lot of bears.
So I'm looking at photos on your website right now, and some of them are very green, others are very brown terrain. Is it real brown in the spring, and then you get a lot of rain and whatnot over the summer, and it greens up going into fall?
Yes, it's green right now. I'm sitting here looking out the window right now. It's greened up. And I said my son just came back 2 days ago from doing down by Coal Bay and down to Aleutian. He said it's still brown down there, but it's green right here. So the Aleutians are, but he's talking about 250 miles away.
So I'm looking at the photo.
That does change.
Look at the photo you sent me a couple weeks ago of what you said was the last bear that you guys took in the spring season this year. Can you briefly just tell us the story of that hunt so someone maybe can get an idea of what it's like up there on a bear hunt with you?
Yeah, sure. We were here again. We were hunting out. We've got another cabin. We have two cabins we own here, and we were hunting out of the cabin. It's actually visible in the background. I don't know which picture I sent it, which of the clients. I thought probably the one we were kind of up on a hill,
mm-hmm.
a little. The first bear shot was on a beaver dam right in front of the tent.
Huh.
But the second one was we had to hike. It was I think on GPS. I think one of the packers had a GPS with him on his phone or something. He said it was like a little over 2 miles back to camp. But that 2 miles, there was 3 gullies that were. I mean, you're using your hands and knees to climb up some of them. I mean, they weren't very steep. They were maybe 50 feet high, 100 feet high, but so it was rugged terrain to get there. We had to cross a creek that was, crotch deep and flowing really fast and slick, and so it was. And the marshy terrain is hard walking in too, but even what looks flat. So yeah, it was a tough hunt. We didn't get back. We left. We saw that bear in the morning, and we didn't get back in till almost 1 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Time we got back, got stalked and skinned and worked our way back. So yeah, it was hard physically. I mean, if any of my guys that were with me as packers, if I'd been younger stuff, wouldn't have been as hard coming back, but we just do what we got to do, and the hunter's happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. This bear that you sent me, man, he looks like he has a giant head on him. It looks like a beautiful bear.
And that was the one that I had turned down the first day.
Okay.
And I looked and looked and looked, and I said, he's still confusing. Even when we first got up to him, I was like, he's confusing.
But he ended up being a real nice bear then, though.
Yes, he was. You could see by the photo. He was a nice bear.
Man, well, that is interesting how all that works. Well, as we wrap up, can you tell us just a little bit about your family's hunting operation up there in Alaska, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Well, I said we've been here for 30-some years. It is still a family-run operation. Where we've got a 40-acre inn holding in the middle of a wildlife refuge, so we live here, so we know it's not just to open up a camp and go. We're here. We've spent the whole years here. We don't spend all of every year. Springtime and winter gets a little blustery down here along the Aleutians, but we've been here long enough. We know where the bears are going to be and where they're coming from and going to, and the routes doing there. So it doesn't make it easy, but we got a pretty good idea of where to hunt.
Mm-hmm. And you've been doing it for a while, and you got good bears there. You hunt bears in the spring or the fall. You have the moose in the fall.
Right. When I started this, my wife and I came down here and looked into doing this. There was, we saw bears in November when we first came down, and the amount of game we saw, both moose and bear, and we both said I want my grandkids to be able to see the same thing. I want other hunters. So we've never overhunted it. You can't mass produce good hunting. Mm-hmm. There's no way. There's a lot of people try to come in. Oh, we'll take this amount. There was one high profile guy down the peninsula. He used to take 20, 25 hunters a year, and we'd take 6. And a lot of years we killed the same number of bears he did.
Jeez.
He made a lot more money than I did, but that wasn't, that's not really the point we're doing this. We do it because we love doing it.
So 6 to 7 hunters a year is about what you do for bear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it now in this area for 35 years, and we're still seeing, the same number of big bears and lots of bears. My wife and I, a couple of years ago, we were in the spring, we were looking as the salmon started coming in. We counted one meadow right here by camp. I think we counted 56 bears. It was an unusual spring and the way the salmon were coming, but that's unusual to see that many. But there are a lot of bears in the state. Fish and Game says, well, this whole peninsula is the densest population of bears in the world. Kodiak is close, and we're 40 miles from the island of Kodiak.
Jeez, man. So how many moose hunters do you take a year?
About the same, about 6.
Yep.
And moose population's coming back. There used to be a lot, and then when the caribou left, the bears and the wolves would start preying more on the moose, and the moose population dropped off a little bit. But that was 25 years ago. It's coming back pretty good now too. The whole peninsula. Wide. I think it was up and down. The whole peninsula right now is doing very well for moose.
Well, excellent.
Hey, even lots of the state is too. I mean, the reasons I know in the Brooks Range. I mean, it could be some of this global warming is changing some of the vegetation because they eat a lot of willows, and the willows are doing well too.
Okay.
There's always some fluctuation.
And what time of year do you do, or what months do you do your fishing, and what kind of salmon are you going after?
We've got all five species of salmon come into Bristol Bay here, and the king salmon population is down a little bit, but quite a little bit. We've still got some here, but we have the sockeyes and the chums and pinks and silvers come in, so they stagger. They come in different times, so we get people want to concentrate on this one or that one. But once the salmon start coming in, the bears are concentrated. Bears come from 100 miles away in the park into here. We shot one year that had been tagged that spring over 100 miles away.
Wow.
So the salmon runs attract bears.
Tell me again what months you do your fishing in.
Okay. We start July they start coming in right now. There's a few salmon starting to come in. Subsistence people are putting some nets out in Bristol Bay, but usually the peak of the run is the first week of July, and that's when the sockeyes are coming. The king salmon have been coming in for a week or so, but they trickle in. There's not as many as there used to be. Then once the sockeyes start coming in at the end of June, then all the trout, the char, everything else start feeding on the eggs. So all the fish are in at the same time. So early July up until we quit like first week of September because we're getting ready for moose season. Some of the fishing lodges go throughout the end of September.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, fair enough. Well, Phil, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I really enjoyed this. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us.
Okay. Well, glad to help.
Now, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel right now and hit that like button. Just click on the thumbs up button and the red subscribe button below the video to make sure you don't miss out on any of my future videos about hunting gear reviews, cartridge comparisons, interviews with other people from the hunting industry like Phil, and more. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a link below the video to the website and social media accounts for Grizzly Skins of Alaska. I've also put links below the video to articles I have written about some of my favorite pieces of hunting gear like slings, ear protection, and scopes. For more detailed information on popular hunting cartridges and what they are best suited for, to include brown bear hunting up in Alaska and other things, click on the link in the description below or go to huntingguns101.com. Sign up there to get a free ebook I have written on the best hunting calibers. Now I'm going to turn it over to you. Have you successfully hunted brown bear before? If so, tell me about the hunt. Where were you hunting? What ammo and rifle did you use? How did things go on the hunt? Let me know by leaving a comment on this video right now. Also, feel free to leave a comment with requests for other videos you'd like to see in the future. Other interviews, other cartridge comparisons or profiles, that sort of thing. Thanks for watching this video. Have a great day and good hunting.